It is time now for Money Power Politics. And this evening, the president's trade policy took another hit. The U.S. Court of International Trade ruled against the president's 10% global tariffs, saying they are invalid and unauthorized by law. Remember, back in February, the president signed an order imposing these import taxes just hours after the Supreme Court struck down most of his first round of tariffs. Brooke Masters joins me now. She is the U.S. managing editor for the Financial Times. And our boy, Justin Wolfers, professor of economics and public policy at the University of Michigan. And guess what? This little boy is starting a brand new media company, all his own, Platypus Economics. Congratulations to you, Justin. But you are not getting the first question. What do you make of this decision, Brooke?
I think it was in some ways predictable. They have been trying to use 1970s laws to do things that no president has done in the 50 years since those laws were passed.
Yeah, because it didn't make any sense.
It's certainly an interesting interpretation of the law.
Justin, the administration hasn't even finished refunding the billions from the previous tariffs. How significant is this? Like, what's the actual impact?
Well, it's a big deal, which is it makes a dumb tariff a little bit more dumb and moves us to the next dumb stage of this dumb trade war. So the legal authority they were relying on was one that applied whenever there was a balance of payments deficit. Now, there hasn't been a balance of payments deficit of any size in the United States for at least 50 years. Literally, it's impossible. Our balance of payments deficit is $0. This was always a stopgap measure. The original tariffs are unconstitutional. These ones are unconstitutional. And eventually they're going to have to get round to a whole bunch of other tariffs that are a bit more work and a bit more of a pain in the ass, and they're not very good at getting their homework done. There is a secret way around this. If you've got a good idea, I've heard, you can take it to Congress and pass a law, and the Supreme Court gave Congress the power over tariffs.
The Supreme Court may have given Congress, but they're forgetting Congress has decided to stop doing their jobs for the last few years. I want to cover a new topic, though, because let's talk about the markets, which are different from the economy. We've seen strong corporate earnings. We know AI and the future of AI are not just keeping the markets afloat, they're keeping markets very high. But I want to share some things we learned today. McDonald's CEO said on their earnings call, McDonald's, that consumer spending is getting a little bit worse. The CEO of Papa John's says his customers are now trading down to smaller pizzas. The CEO of Kraft Heinz tells the Wall Street Journal that consumers are, quote, literally running out of money at the end of the month. And Whirlpool said today that they haven't seen demand this soft since 2008. What does all that tell you?
K-shaped economy. People at the bottom half of the economic ladder are struggling, and they don't have a lot of space to absorb the extra cost, particularly of higher gas prices. And as those higher gas prices feed through to everything else, like the cost of your stuff at McDonald's, because it has to get trucked there, remember. And so therefore, what we are seeing is most consumers who don't have extra money are really, really squeezed.
Then help me understand this. And Justin, I'm coming to you in 1 second. I've been saying it all week. I just came home from the Milken Conference, right? Filled with the most successful investors who are talking about this like these are the go-go days. So beyond this K-shaped economy, is the ultra 1% so disconnected from the rest of the world? If you take the Forbes 400, right, richest people in the world at the end of the Biden economy, their wealth has exploded in the last 2 years.
Absolutely. And they are more and more isolated from it. If you look, people are living in penthouses and in, gated communities, and they don't even ski with the rest of us. They have to have their own ski lift.
They're not flying. They're not going to the same airports. They're not going to public doctors. They're truly living in another dimension.
They absolutely are. And another thing to remember is that stock market boom. If you look at the S&P 500, it's the narrowest boom we've had in history. It's all dependent on a few companies. And if you happen to be a part of those companies, great for you. If you don't, bummer.
Justin, it feels like so many people, so many actual economists, just like you, business leaders that run real companies with real consumers, are sounding the alarm. I just mentioned I was with Wall Street investors.
As Donald Trump's brain continues to drain into a puddle of mush, a congressman is sounding the alarm with words like senile and dangerous. And coming up next, I have his DEFCON 1 warning about the man with access to the nuclear codes. Let's begin this report with another health warning that is trending right now. It seems the White House is losing its grip on covering up whatever is going on with Trump's hands, and it looks like it's getting worse. It's no laughing matter, but it was hilariously described in a post by Covey that said, Trump's hands look like something RFK would eat.
We have a new photo today that shows both of President Trump's hands covered in bruising and makeup. Now, if you've been following this story, this isn't something new. Trump has appeared over the last several months with visible bruising on his hands, often trying to cover it up with makeup. But to see the bruising on both hands is something new. And when White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt was asked about the bruising on Trump's hands, she previously told the press,
"As for the bandages on the hand, we've also given you an explanation for that in the past. The president is literally constantly shaking hands. The Oval Office is like Grand Central Terminal. He is meeting with more people than any of you even know about on a daily basis. He's also on a daily aspirin regimen, which is something his physical examinations has said in the past as well, which can contribute to that bruising that you see."
I mean, come on, people. That's just such a BS excuse. And not to mention, this new bruising comes as Trump made an unscheduled visit to the dentist last weekend, which fueled even more speculation and questions surrounding his health. And let's be so for real, if this was Joe Biden, if Joe Biden was showing up to public events with bruises on his hands and trying to cover it up with makeup, the media, specifically conservative media, would be in absolute meltdown mode, demanding answers about his health. So I hope reporters keep pressing the White House about this, because so far the answers from the White House have been vague and unconvincing.
And now let's begin our dive into Trump's dance with dementia with a member of the press who has pressed him often. Have a listen to Jim Acosta's analysis, and then I'll have a congressman sounding the cognitive alarm.
Here we go. I've been making this point. I don't know if anybody else wants to make this point with me, but all of this is a sign of he's just not there anymore. He's gone. It's one flew over the cuckoo's nest. And we just need to, as adults in the American family writ large, it's time we have this conversation and have this intervention with one another. And we just admit that he's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And he's just building one thing after another in his honor, because I don't know, that's what some people do at the end.
The post-truth economy is not an abstraction. It is $6 gas and a ballroom bill. Let's start with what happened in CARD, because it matters and it's getting buried under the noise. The U.S. Court of International Trade ruled that the president's 10% global tariffs are invalid and unauthorized by law. This is the second time the legal architecture of Trump's trade policy has collapsed under judicial review. The Supreme Court struck down the first round, and now the fallback tariffs imposed within hours of that decision have also failed. The administration is still in the process of refunding billions from the previous round. They now have another round to unwind. And as Justin Wolfers points out with uncomfortable precision, the legal authority being claimed doesn't even meet its own threshold. The statute invoked applies to balance of payments deficits, and the United States hasn't had one in 50 years. This was always a constitutional non-starter being deployed as if its institutional inertia would carry it further than the law allowed. The path forward, taking it to Congress, passing actual legislation, is theoretically available. It is also theoretically available to a Congress that has spent years systematically outsourcing its responsibilities to the executive branch and is not rushing to reclaim them now. The tariff fight is at its core a separation of powers power story being dressed up as a trade policy debate. Court keep hanging it back to the legislator. The legislator keeps looking the other way. But the tariff ruling is almost a footnote compared to what the earnings sales are revealing this week. Because the earnings calls are where economic reality stops being a political argument and starts being a documented corporate record. McDonald's is seeing consumer spending weaken. Papa John's customers are trading down to smaller pizzas. Kraft Heinz CEOs told the Wall Street Journal that consumers are literally running out of money at the end of the month. Whirlpool says demand hasn't been this soft since 2008. These are not partisan sources. These are publicly traded companies with legal obligation to report accurate information to their shareholders. Their CEOs are not making political statements. They are describing what's happening to their customer bases. Against that backdrop, the Energy Secretary went on television to describe the administration energy recorded as incredibly successful, while gas in California sits above $6 a gallon. The Transportation Secretary said, "We are in a good place. These statements are not spin in the traditional political sense. Spin involves taking real facts and forming them favorably." What's happening here is, again, transportation categorically different. The fact being cited doesn't exist. The success being claimed is directly contradicted by data visible to anyone who drives a car, buys groceries, or watches an earning call. Wolfer's reaction, that he has PhD in economics, has read thousands of research papers, and is now on television trying to explain to the Energy Secretary that energy is expensive, captures the absurdity accurately. This should not require expertise. It requires a gas pump. The K-shaped economy farming is the most important structural concept, is being underused in the mainstream coverage of this moment. The stock market is being sustained by a historically narrow group of companies, predominantly AI adjacent tech, whose performance is disconnecting the headline index from the actual economic experience of most Americans. The Forbes 400 have seen their wealth explode. The Milken conference call is apparently talking about the current moment like the go-go days are back. Meanwhile, McDonald's is reporting weakening their consumer spending, and Whirlpool hasn't seen demand this soft in 17 years. These are not contradictory data points from a confusing economy. They are consistent data points from a K-shaped one, where the economy working well for a thin slice at the top is being reported as the economy working well period. The political consequences of this divergence are already showing up in the approval numbers, and Brock Masters is right that it is starting to register. The independents and soft Republicans who voted on pocketbook issues, who believe the promise about lower prices, a golden age economic dominance, are watching their actual lived experience diverge from the official narrative in ways that are now impossible to paper over. At $4.55 a gallon nationally and $6 in California, the gap between what the administration is saying and what people are paying is not an abstraction. It is the number on the pump every time they fill up. Wolfer's point about the Obamacare subsidy expiration landing on top of all of his is underreported. Working and middle class families are simultaneously absorbing higher gas prices, higher food prices, higher mortgage rates tied to energy-driven inflation, and a healthcare cost increase as subsidies expire. Any one of those would be politically significant, all of them simultaneously, while the Senate looks for $1 billion for a presidential ballroom and the East Wing sits in rubble. Apparently demolished without clear legal authority is the kind of governing environment that doesn't produce midterm results, it produces roots.